New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
What if the person you think you are is just a fraction of who you truly are? What if years of conditioning and surviving in a challenging world have left you clinging to strategies and beliefs that mask your truest nature? I'm Catherine Duca, psychotherapist and self-esteem coach, and you're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? A show that looks beneath our psychological masks and uncovers our profoundly messy, beautiful, brilliant, tender-hearted essence. Join me as we go in search of the hidden power of our true selves. I'm so glad you're here. I am so glad you're here. Welcome, welcome. You're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? A podcast to help you learn how to have the highest regard for yourself, how to live from a place of self-respect and self-love, and how to make yourself a priority in your own life. Meet me here each week for curated tips and strategies designed to help you drop your masks, connect with your truest essence, and simply live more easily. Because we know that when we do these things, we automatically give others permission to do the same. And isn't that a beautiful thing? Well, tonight I am going to forego most of my notes, I think, and just speak from the heart. Tonight happens to be a very special night in my life. It is my birthday. It's a milestone birthday. I'm turning 70. And, I have moments when I have to kind of wrap my head around that number. So it has been a time of reflection for me. I've been thinking about my life, and my thoughts automatically turn to my parents and my mom in particular on this night. My mother, Grace Duca. And you may have heard me tell this little story before, but although this is my birthday and this is the date on my birth certificate, I was actually born after midnight on the next day, so December 16th. As my mother was being wheeled into the delivery room, she was already thinking ahead that the cutoff for kindergarten was December 15th. And she was afraid that I would be, I would lose a year. And so she must have said something out loud, and her nursing friends, my mom was actually a nursing supervisor on the maternity unit of the hospital where I was born, Hackensack Hospital. Her nursing friends must have heard her and took it upon themselves to, I guess, alter the time of my birth so that I would not miss a year and start kindergarten late. So I celebrate both days, but this is the day that I think about my birthday. So I dedicate this show to my mother, Grace Duca, and all that she meant and means to me. She's been gone now about 20 years, but is ever present and in my heart daily. Tonight, I want to talk about not only my own birthday, but I want to talk about the birth that each of us is given to, perhaps every year on the anniversary of our birth. Certainly during this time of holiday season, many people believe this is a time of birth and rebirth. So I'd like us to give some thought to who it is and what it is that we want to give birth to within ourselves. But first, a few minutes about my mother, Grace, so that I could let you into my own evolution, my own birthing process, and what I hope to do in my rebirth. And if you're listening live and feel so inclined, I welcome your comments, your questions, your thoughts, your insights. I love it when this is interactive. So please feel free. And if you want to mention anything about your mom in the chat, by all means do so. We wouldn't be here without our parents, would we? Without our mothers to give us life. So Grace Duca was a very interesting woman. She was I call her a maternal smoothie, because she was really a blend of many characteristics, some of which were opposite one another. She was born in Arkansas. She never met a stranger. She was warm to everyone. And she lived a life of service and contribution. She was a nurse and went into the Army, actually, where she met my father. And I believe her rank when she was discharged was, I believe she was a captain. And something, a story that I grew up with that I'm actually very proud of. She was then General Eisenhower's private duty nurse over Thanksgiving, actually, when he underwent a tonsillectomy. And she was one of his private nurses, not the only one, but one of a small group. And as the story goes, she actually had Thanksgiving dinner with the general and Mamie Eisenhower. And Mrs. Eisenhower baked a pumpkin chiffon pie and gave my mother her handwritten recipe, which I still have. You can go online, actually, and get the recipe. But she gave my mother on an index card the recipe. And it is a dessert that she made and then I made every year since. It's a very special thing for me. So my mother, being in the military, was quite stoic. She was not given to demonstrative signs of affection. There's that stutter I told you about from the 3rd grade. See, it's here. The first time we hugged, I may have mentioned this before. The first time we hugged, I think I was in my early 30s. I didn't feel well, and she helped me, and I hugged her when I went home, and she kind of stood there a bit stiff, but I consider that a hug, and it was the very first time we hugged that I could remember anyway, and I'll never forget it. So she was not very touchy-feely, and she could be by the book, and as I said, stoic. An example of that is I went through a difficulty swallowing phase. I think one time I had trouble swallowing a baby aspirin. I thought I was choking. I was about 7. And from then, I developed a fear of choking. But if I had to take an aspirin, she was not very patient or tolerant of my crying. And she used to have a kind of a motto that she lived by, and this will give you a little window into her personality. She would say, she called me Kathy. Kathy. Everything had an extra syllable with her Southern accent. Kathy, she would say, I was taught in nurses training, we do what's necessary for the patient. We never coddle the patient. She would always say that. And so my mother was not one to coddle, but she was a good provider, and she was very generous with what she had. She did everything for my brother and me. did very little for herself, quite self-sacrificing. And because she wasn't very touchy-feely and didn't hug, I got the feeling that I wasn't very huggable, to tell you the truth. So I grew up actually a lot like her, kind of reserved, kind of formal, I would say. And although I was in high school and college very popular, I would say, I was president of my class every year and that sort of thing. I was very popular and very outgoing, but if you tried to get close to me, that just couldn't happen. I didn't know how to do it. And I had walls up and masks on to protect the part of me that felt unlovable. I couldn't have expressed it in these terms back then, but looking back, that's exactly how I felt. Well, if she didn't hug me, I must be unhuggable. Who would want to hug me? So I thought that I was valued for other qualities. I thought I was valued for, I guess, my intellect and my sense of humor. And I would try to have an air of some kind of polish about me. And that's how I got through life. And those are not very huggable qualities, but I thought they were admirable ones. And, I still think they are. So growing up, who I was from my mother was like her. I became a leader in many ways. Like her, I became very interested in other people, became interested in how they were, if they were happy or not. I'm sure it's a large reason behind why I decided to do this work and become a psychotherapist. I love being in service. And I was distant and emotionally detached and likable, but again, not someone that you could kind of necessarily warm up to. So as I think about my birthday and I think about all the years I've been alive, I think about who I was before I examined who I was. And what helped me give birth to a different Kathy, a Kathy who I think became more approachable, more open, less defended, less walled off, was the work I did on myself in psychotherapy and with my minister and practitioners. I learned through simple trial and error. I learned that the parts of myself that I thought were unappealing, the parts of myself that I thought were embarrassing or shameful, actually, these were parts that I kind of disowned. But in therapy and with my minister, these aspects of my persona came out, and to my amazement, they didn't hurt anybody. They didn't set anybody running. I was accepted by these individuals for not only who I was, but for who I thought I was. I was accepted for the unlovable person I thought I was. And in that atmosphere of unconditional love and unconditional regard, I felt safe. And in that safety, I could examine why I felt the way I felt, why I felt so distant from people and so closed off, albeit, again, popular and outgoing, never stayed home, always had something to do. But this was my secret. And so through sheer determination and relentlessness and the kindness and skill of the professionals I spoke to, I learned that there was more to me than the fact that my mother didn't hug me and what I made that mean. And I learned along the way something so simple but mind-blowing. I learned that before she was my mom, Grace Duca was a person in her own right who had her own upbringing there in Town, Arkansas. And she had some difficulties of her own and some challenges. And I think as a result, she herself had to wall herself off and keep herself safe. And so I learned that my perceived inadequacies weren't the deal breakers that I thought they were in relationships and when it came to love. I understood that I absorbed these things from her because who she was as a person and the things she struggled with were very human things. And so the end of the story with my mom is as she developed late onset Alzheimer's, her cognition deteriorated, and the woman I knew slowly slipped away. Many of you know what that's like, I know. You know the difficulties. You know the grieving. You know the heartache, actually. I made peace with her problems. What I later learned were her problems that became my problems. I made peace with them. And my mother came to live with me for the last few years of her life and on hospice care, and actually died in my arms. Actually, I administered the morphine to her. Those of you who know about hospice, you know when the patient gets to a certain point, you can administer morphine, which helps them calm down, lowers their respiratory rate, and eases their passing. And I remember that Friday morning on July 26th, some 20 years ago, as I administered that morphine. And I'll tell you, such a profound moment, but makes me smile too. It was a Friday morning at 8 o'clock, and every Friday morning the landscapers would come. And so at that profoundly sacred moment, when my mother was taking her last breaths in my arms, there were landscapers right outside the window, right behind her bed, and the leaf blowers, and the juxtaposition of life being life and the world spinning as it does, and my world stopping still as I was saying goodbye to my mother in her body at that time. And it was one of the most profound, most beautiful, most privileged moments of my life to give this woman who gave me life, to usher her to her home. Thank you for being in this space with me as I reflect on that. I have to say, although I've thought of this all day in anticipation of being with you tonight, it's not until I am actually with you, knowing that you are out there, it's not until I share this with you that it comes more alive and I feel things about it. And I love that. Frankly, I love that. I feel more alive and more present. I feel more present to the joys and the sorrows of life. And so that moment lives in me always. And the gifts my mother gave, the gifts she gave knowingly and directly and purposefully, and the gifts she gave that she has no idea, the gifts she gave me by default, the work that she didn't know she would have me do, but that's how it went. And so I am filled tonight with gratitude and love for this woman who birthed me. And I am filled with gratitude to everyone who helped me usher in, everyone who was a midwife to the Kathy I've become. I have profound gratitude and respect. And so I'm seeing in the comments, Wayne, life's sparkling wellspring. Isn't that true, Wayne? Life's sparkling wellspring. And Janine, thank you. I feel your love as you say you're right here with me. I know that. I know that. And so right now, this feels to me like another sacred space. So that's who I was, and who I have been able to give birth to is someone who honors herself. I really feel like I do that now, not as a destination, but as an evolution, as a process. I can honor myself now. So when I say this podcast is about helping you have the highest regard for yourself, I mean it. I mean it. Because having a high regard for yourself is honoring yourself, where you've come from, where you're going, and everyone along your journey, actually. Living from a place of self-respect and self-love, I feel, is everything. Making ourselves a priority is important because our lives are important, and living them well is important. So I've become someone through introspection, through psychotherapy, through my work in this teaching, religious science of mind for me. I've become someone who is a little kinder, a little less worried about the exterior, a little more living from the inside out, a little more forgiving of myself, and by extension, a bit more forgiving of others. So that's what I've birthed in myself. And on this day, December 15th, and tomorrow, the 16th, I will give thought to what I want to give more birth to or rebirth. A few things. I want to have a lighter step, actually. I can be very intense. And I like that, actually, about myself. But I could use a lighter touch sometimes. So I hope to be that for myself and my partner and those I meet, my clients. I hope to be more present. I hope to be less reactive. I hope to not have other people's moods dictate my own. Not that they do that, but I allow that. I hope to allow others to have their own sacred space and their own moods while I have mine. I hope to continue to have agency for myself and self-determination while I honor those very things in other people. So I have more work to do on my 70th birthday. And I have a lot more living to do and a lot more practice to do and a lot more self-forgiveness to do. So these are my reflections. I'm noticing something in the chat here from Patricia. Patricia says, "Happy pre-birthday, Kathy. Surely she loved you your whole life. But when did you realize she loved you?" Well, that's a question. That's a question, Patricia. You know what? I'm going to answer it. Forget what I said about a lighter step. I'm going to answer it. It's a little bit heavy, but I'm going to go there. You ready? So now this might sound a little out there, but here we go. I'll make it snappy. So a couple of years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I'm perfectly fine now. Stage 1A. And I needed surgery and some radiation. And when I was in the place the hospital. That's the place I was in. I was in the hospital about to have my surgery, and I was left alone in the room where the doctor had examined me, and she had on the monitor, I mean, it was like the Jumbotron. It was a huge monitor. And she had my little breast tumor up on the monitor. And of course, it was very enlarged. The tumor itself was itsy bitsy, the head of a pin. Can you believe? But on the monitor, it looked very big. And how they knew that this little thing was problematic was by the shape. It had little jagged edges. And I'm looking right at the monitor, and I'm looking at this little tumor with its jagged edges. And something came over me right then and there, Patricia, and those of you who are listening. Something came over me right then and there where I said to myself, I was talking out loud, I was crying, sobbing. Never thought this in my life. I was talking to that little spot, that little tumor, and I said, I know why you're there. I know why you're there. You're there because you calcified. You're there because your being, your heart, your nature toughened up because you didn't think she loved you. And that's what made that little cancerous thing. And I'm crying. I'm sobbing. And in that moment, Patricia, I had the conscious thought, not only did she love me, she loved me tremendously. And you know what? I love her tremendously. I love her tremendously. And whereas all my life growing up, I wanted other people to be my mom. I wanted Donna Reed. Oh, if you remember Donna Reed, I wanted her to be my mom. And when she died in real life, I spent 2 therapy sessions, no joke, grieving her because in my mind, I was all wrapped up. I wanted her to be my mom. But in that moment, on that examining table, looking at that monitor, I only wanted Grace Duca to be my mom. And I only wanted to hear Kathy from her. So that's the moment I realized that she loved me. And a beautiful and interesting, fascinating, and unexpected thing happened. I applied that knowing in that moment. I applied it sort of retroactively across my whole lifespan. I could tell in my mind, in my being, all the years I felt unhuggable, which is to say unlovable. She did love me. And so there was like this wave of love, hers and mine, for one another and for me, and me to her, washed over me. And it has carried me to this day. That was 2 years ago. So that's the moment I knew. Isn't that something? I suppose there could have been other ways, other times I might have realized it. But certain things wake us up, don't they? Certain things just wake us up. And that day I awakened. So I invite you, dear listeners, I invite you to give thought to who is it and what is it you would like to give birth to today, on your next birthday, at Christmas time if you celebrate, whenever you open your mind to it. Who do you want to give birth to? I invite you right now to take a moment and visualize the gifts you want to bring. You know, at this time, Christians anyway, talk about Christmas time and the manger and the wise men and all of that. And, you know, that applies to each of us, I feel. That manger, I think, represents the womb each of us embodies, the womb of what is possible for each of us, the potentiality each of our lives carry, if only we can deliver this possibility out into the world. The wise men and their gifts, the baby representing our higher consciousness, Christ consciousness, our higher selves. The wise men who bring the gifts, the gold, the frankincense, the myrrh, to honor the baby's consciousness, to honor one's capacity to love self and to love the world. So I invite you to think about what it is and who it is you want to show up as in the world. Do you want to be kinder, gentler, more tolerant, more forgiving, more awake, more chill, more curious, more quiet, more connected? I could go on. You see, I believe if we don't consciously and deliberately think about our rebirth, if we just allow ourselves to go on autopilot, the world is going to have us. And we are going to be at the mercy of all of the effects of the world. And the people in it, our partners, our friends, the car that cuts you off at the Lincoln Tunnel, whatever. But if we grab hold, if we embrace and embody the womb that each of us is and make that manifest, boy, we have an opportunity to do something with this one precious life, don't we? So think about that. Awakening does not happen by itself. There may be moments like my tumor moment, but I think I met that moment because I prepared my consciousness to take note of moments like that. So what I'm saying, friends, is that on autopilot, just getting up in the morning and being at the effect of life, that's not going to get us anywhere. What will, I believe, is what I'm saying here, giving thought to who we want to be and creating that opportunity for ourselves. I've said it before, I'll say it again. A Course in Miracles says we get to heaven 2 by 2. And that means as I began to feel my feelings about that story, I did it because I'm here in your company, not in my own echo chamber. So as you allow more of yourself to come out and mix that up with the world, interact and intersect, both you and the other person walk away with more. So think about what you want that to be. It's a beautiful thing. So what I'm going to do now is give us all an opportunity to let this kind of sink in and digest. I'm going to take a small break, and then there's an interesting question that came through, and I'll read it and do my best to answer it. So get a drink of water or, just let these thoughts settle in, and we'll come back in a few minutes. You're listening to Who Do You Think You Are on New Thought Media Network.
New Thought Media Network is on the rise. We're looking to grow with you. Do you have technical media experience? Or perhaps a desire to learn? Are you willing to volunteer your precious time and attention? We share this message to benefit all. If you possess a computer with a camera and a microphone, we will share our knowledge with you. Behind the scenes or being the star, let us bless our one. Contact us at info@ntmedia.org.
What if the person you think you are is just a fraction of who you truly are? What if years of conditioning and surviving in a challenging world have left you clinging to strategies and beliefs that mask your truest nature? I'm Catherine Duca, psychotherapist and self-esteem coach, and you're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? A show that looks beneath our psychological masks and uncovers our profoundly messy, beautiful, brilliant, tender-hearted essence. Join me as we go in search of the hidden power of our true selves. I'm so glad you're here. And we're back. If you're just joining me, you're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? And we are talking tonight about giving birth to our higher self, giving birth to who and what we want to show up as in the world. And we do this by deliberate creation. It does not happen by happenstance. So this is what we've been talking about. We got a little heavy there for a second. I hope everybody's okay listening to that story. Let me know if you're still in the chat. Let me know how that was for you to hear. And so much for my light step. Huh? Okay, I'm going to turn to a listener's question. It's an interesting question. It's a very, it's kind of a deep question. There are a lot of aspects to it. I don't know if I can address the whole of it tonight. But as with every question I read, I don't forget about the question. And I hope you don't either. We're going to do a little bit of building each week on what we've talked about in previous episodes, because the whole goal of living from self-respect and self-love is to go deeper and deeper and deeper into it. So I'll read the question and we'll see. Patricia says, thank you, Patricia. It's not too heavy, heartfelt, personal, and beautiful. All right, I'm glad. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so here's my question. It says, hi, Catherine. I feel like I've made so many mistakes in my life. So many is highlighted. From poor choices in relationships to being irresponsible with money. People, including friends, sometimes tell me I have an attitude. I'm not aware of this. I just know I'm unhappy, even depressed sometimes, and I feel stuck. Something you said on another episode stayed with me because it's true. I don't know why or how I got like this, and I have no clue how to change course. I'm getting older, and I'm worried that my eggs will dry up before I've gotten into a relationship, and I'm worried. Okay, a lot of parts to that. I've made so many mistakes, poor choices, irresponsible with money. Friends tell me I have an attitude, but not aware of this. I just know I'm unhappy, even depressed sometimes, and I feel stuck. I don't know how I got here, and I don't know how I'm going to get out. Okay. This is from someone by the name of Alex. A woman, because I assumed talking about eggs. Okay, well, here's the thing. The very the very first thing I talk about for myself and for my clients and for anyone is something I call compassionate recognition, which is to say this: we may not know how we got to be a certain way yet. That takes exploration and introspection. But just knowing that we have some kind of struggle, I believe all of our struggles come from reasons that make sense somewhere in our minds, somewhere in our unconscious. I believe that we have reason for feeling the way we do. I had reason for being so emotionally distant at times and detached from what I was feeling. I had reasons. I shared them with you earlier. So I recommend you begin by saying to yourself, I don't know what the reason is, but I trust that there was at least one reason. Something caused me to be like this. This is not of my choosing, although it is my responsibility to see if I can work this through. So number one, something I call compassionate recognition. It's hard to have compassion for ourselves when we don't know why we need compassion. Don't you think? But compassionate recognition is like maybe just putting your big toe in the pool. I recognize that there's some reason why I have this struggle, why I've made poor choices in relationships. We talked last week about if we don't honor ourselves, if we don't know who we are, we're not going to recognize the right person. I believe we always choose a person who is on our vibrational wavelength. Their style may be different from ours. Oh, that person is this and that person is that. But actually, upon deeper reflection, they are matching our vibrations. So if we don't know who we are, and we are on autopilot, asleep psychologically, spiritually, we're going to attract people who are in the same state of psychological slumber. And then we call it, there's something wrong with that person. But compassionate recognition, which I believe is step one, will have us consider, okay, there's a reason why, and I don't know what it was, but I at least honor that much. And when you begin to do that, you immediately soften. Some of that edge is smoothed out. Maybe my role models didn't show me who the right person was. Maybe I thought I had to be a certain way to have someone love me, so I wasn't letting enough of myself shine through. You see, these are all reasons. So I'm not going to rush in and say, forgive yourself, because you don't quite know what you're forgiving yourself for yet, Alex. But I know you will if you continue to look with curiosity. Our role models were probably very well intended, but flawed. Our parents were flawed. And we took those flaws and we often made them about us, because that's what children do. Parents are the way they are because we're the way we are. And if we have a problem with them, well, maybe it's because we're not good enough or smart enough or a good girl enough or something like that. So we make it mean something about us and we interpret it down. We interpret it as an inadequacy. So what I say as step one, just give yourself that room. Poor choices in relationships, as you say, your words, irresponsible with money, these are symptoms. These are not, DNA, unchangeable characteristics. If you have brown eyes, you have brown eyes. They're never going to change. But these characteristics are interchangeable. We can swap out what we learned for a different characteristic when we learn better. right? The saying, we all know it. When we know better, what happens? We do better. Of course. Just you reaching out to get some input, in this case happens to be mine, is an important first step toward being curious about yourself and interested about yourself. And good for you, Alex. I congratulate you, because here's the thing that happens. This is so fascinating and so impactful. The minute we say, I have this problem, and hopefully we all learn to say, I have this problem, as opposed to, I am this problem. I have this problem with money. I have this problem with whom I get into relationship with. The minute we say that, something happens. We become bigger than the problem itself. Our I am consciousness is larger than the problem. That's the first thing that happens. The next thing that happens, and I love this, is we begin to have objectivity. When we're so identified with the characteristic, I am irresponsible, I am depressed, I am, a poor relationship picker. No, we're a good relationship picker with what we believe about ourselves. We pick perfectly. This is so important. We pick perfectly for who we think we are. But who we think we are isn't necessarily who we are. I thought I was unlovable and unhuggable, and I discovered I'm not. And who I am is more magnificent than who I thought, hence the name of the show. So, Alex, by asking the question, you give yourself more room to inquire, to lean into it. And that, my friend, is a good thing. So I thank you for your question and your disclosure. And I'm going to hold on to this question as I do all the others. And we will be weaving this in and revisiting and building upon that answer. That's step one. And about the eggs, listen, I get that. I really do. I really do. I'm going to tell you something you already know, and that is pressuring yourself isn't going to help. But I'm not going to tell you not to feel that way, because that's the least helpful thing I could say. I'm going to ask you and invite you and encourage you to bring your attention slightly over here and lean into that question. What did I learn? What messages did I absorb? When did that happen? What did I make of that? What did I think of myself? And by that redirection, you open a portal. I said last week, the door opens from the inside only. This is how it's done. This is the first step. So, even though I've taken that step 1,000 times in my life and I've opened a door, there are more doors for me yet to open. And so I'm going to do this work along with you, Alex, and lean into my questions and hit my growing edge and see if I can get beyond it a little bit. So we're going to be doing this together. And I hope those of you listening will also join in. Because as we end this weekend and as we end this time together, I hope we can feel a connection to each other. Just something in the ethers that says, we were all on that podcast. We were all listening. We were all, I don't know, maybe some of us were tearing up at the same point. And so let's bring one another with us into our week. Let's not be, what is that expression? Let's not be the tail wagging the dog. Is that what I want to say? Let's not be at the effect of everything. Let's be as rooted as we can in our own convictions, our own values. Okay, let's not get thrown. Let's be like, as Carole King says, that young tree in the winter time. I'll learn how to bend. Let's bend. let's bend. Let's give ourselves that permission, and let's give one another that permission. So those of you listening live tonight, it's Sunday night, it's almost 10 o'clock. Perhaps you're ready to drift off. As I say each week, if you have any worries, Alex, if you're worried here, and you are, let it go just for tonight. Let it go just for tonight. It'll be there in the morning. You'll come at it fresh. Maybe you'll re-listen to this podcast and refresh your memory. And let's get a good night's sleep tonight. I said I went to see White Christmas last week, and I think the last line, or one of the last lines, was this, and so I'll leave you with this. It says, if you're worried tonight and you can't sleep, count your blessings instead of sheep. I know I will. One of my blessings near the top of the list is this podcast, is this wonderful station, is the producer of this show, Reverend Michael Mangus. Thank you, Michael. Everyone who's had a hand in me getting from the hairbrush in front of the mirror to you tonight, I thank. And lastly, I say, Mom, if you're listening, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for giving birth to me. Thank you for worrying about kindergarten. And thank you for loving me my whole life. I love you more than anything. You're listening to Who Do You Think You Are? I'm Catherine Duca, your host. I will see you next week, my friends. Be well. Know that you are loved. Good night.
New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment. Inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.